Well, hi guys. Hope you're all doing great. Today I did want to read to you from my new book. It hasn't even come out yet. Out the Bottomless Pit 2. But I can't yet do that. It's going to come out at Christmas. About the paranormal, about very strange circumstances, and a lot of odd things going on in the background. Some of which I'm sure you've all experienced sometime or other, good and bad. I wanted to talk about that paranormal book, which is a continuation of my first book, Out the Bottomless Pit, which a lot of people asked me for a sequel. So it's now ready. I can't do that yet because my daughter's making the most incredible front cover, really scary. I mean, not playing games here. As I've mentioned before, it's got the most ferocious looking dragon you ever saw. Not something kiddish, but something really nasty and ferocious, coming out of a bottomless pit. Nasty looking giants clumbering out, and it's got millions of these locust-like creatures with scorpions in their tails, stinging somebody that's got one of the implants. And it's a transhuman world of the future. I saw it recently in Vision. So it looks like we've got a bit of time until you get a lot of transhuman people walking around. But anyway, that is from Revelation 9, of course. Pretty scary stuff. So we deliberately made it scary and not kiddish. But unfortunately, I don't have the bit. I saw bits of it yesterday. Incredible. The artist says it won't be ready, though, till about Saturday. So not this week, but next week, we'll be able to talk more about my new book, Out of the Bottomless Pit 2. But instead of that, today I'm going to read to you from not this book that just came out in October this year, a month ago, the Testament to All Patriarchs, but the book before that. I'm going to read you from Eden Insights, about the Garden of Eden and the flood, that time period. I'm just going to read you straight today from, it's a short chapter here, from chapter 53 from my book, Eden Insights. Now this has some pretty incredible information in here. And as you know, I've often said that personally, my conviction is I believe the earth is not solid. I don't think it's flat. I think it's hollow. And why do I think that? Well, not just from easy experiments you can make to prove it. Well, I won't go into that now. I've covered that many times. But many of the books and the Apocrypha books, they hint at the earth being hollow, or even name it. The book that shows it the most in 5 chapters is the Apocrypha book of 2nd Esdras, or my book, Esdras Insights. In 5 of the chapters, God makes it very plain that the earth is like a womb, it's hollow. And I think it makes a lot more sense, and I think it's the reason why man can't even explain the weather, because he doesn't take the weather inside the earth into consideration. I've mentioned that before. But lest I get sidetracked by too many topics, I'll read you this short chapter. It's only actually a few pages long. So this is called Chapter 53 from Eden Insights, which contains the lost books Adam and Eve inside this book. The Great Flood. And in my Insights books, all the original verses are contained within boxes, and then the comments and Bible verses and other things are outside the boxes. So, the Great Flood. They're not very far from the cave when Satan came towards them, talk about Adam and Eve, and hid themselves between them and the cave under the form of 2 ravenous lions, 3 days without food. They came towards Adam and Eve as if to break them in pieces and devour them. Well, I won't go into a big discussion here about why some people say, well, that's impossible, because the animals were not supposed to harm each other in the beginning. Well, that's debatable. It depends if they're being inspired by Satan or taken over by Satan. Remember, Satan's in the picture too, unfortunately. Yes, God made everything peaceful, but the devil came along and destroyed all that. I'm saying that now, it's not in the book. Anyway, comment 1. Satan disguises himself as 2 ravenous lions with the intent of attacking and killing Adam and Eve. 1 Peter 5, 8 and 9. Be sober, be vigilant. because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about, seeking whom he may devour, whom resist steadfast in the faith. Now the same afflictions are accomplished in your brethren that are in the world. Verse 2 and 3. Then Adam and Eve wept and prayed God to deliver them from their paws, the lions. And the word of God came to them, drove away the lions from them. And of course we all know that the word of God was personified in the form of Jesus himself. As it says in John 1, in the beginning was the Word. The Word was God. The Word was with God. Same was in the beginning with God. So it looks like Jesus showed up in person sometimes with Adam and Eve, which is very interesting. They got kicked out of the garden, but Jesus did show up and protect them and drive away the damn devil. Isaiah 59:19. When the enemy shall come in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord shall lift up a standard against him. And I'm saying this today. Of course, we have a big fight with the devil too, but we don't normally see him in person. And if the Lord and his Spirit comes along and protects us, drives away the devil, we don't normally see it. But with Adam and Eve it was different. They could see the devil, and they could see the Lord. Different than now, very different. How long they had that perception for, well, I talk about that somewhere else, where I think it was for a few months after they came out the Garden of Eden, they could still see things like the Lord or the Word of God, and they could see Satan. And then I think it faded away with time, so it's like it is today where we can't see those things so much. Well, sometimes we get glimpses of the spiritual things, but most of the time we don't see it, we just feel it, sense it, feel the effects of it. Verse 4 and 5. And God said unto Adam, O Adam, what seek thou on the western border? Why hast thou left of thine own accord the eastern border? And which was thy dwelling place? Well, again, I haven't said this in my book here, but I should have done the Adam and Eve. They were so discouraged by getting kicked out the heavenly Garden of Eden that they couldn't avoid the temptation of trying to sneak back into the Garden of Eden. Even if they knew there was an angel there with a big flaming sword, they still tried to get close to it. It's like a baby when it's lost its comfort zone. It wants the comfort zone, its understanding. So that's how it was in the beginning with them. Yeah, for about 3 months, as I said before, Adam and Eve were really disorientated, confused, and it was very hard on them indeed. But eventually they found out that God still loved them, and he was a father and a mother to them. It's just that they couldn't see God all the time, but he was still there, and he loved them very much, and he drove the devil away. And God's the same with each of us today. He loves each one of us very much, and he will drive Satan away and bring each one of us great happiness and joy if we embrace Jesus, embrace the spirit world, because they're real. It's not fantasy, it's all real. So anyway, here's Adam and Eve trying to sneak back, and God catches them trying to sneak back near the garden. And God said unto Adam, O Adam, what seek you on the western border? And why hast thou left of thine own accord the eastern border, in which was thy dwelling place? Now then, turn back to thy cave, that's a cave of treasures, and remain in it, that Satan do not deceive thee, nor work his purpose upon thee. Ephesians 4:27. Neither give place to the devil. Verse 6 and 7. For in this western border, Adam, there will go from thee a seed. Now here's a prophecy. That shall replenish it. And it will defile themselves with sins, and with their yielding to the behest of Satan by following his words. Therefore will I bring upon them the waters of a flood. Here's the prophecy to Adam and Eve. The great flood is coming in the future, and overwhelm them all. But I will deliver what is left of the righteous among them. And look at this bit. Look at the exact words it says here. I will bring them to a distant land, and the land in which thou dwellest now shall remain desolate, without one inhabitant in it. This verse is a key concerning what I wanted to mention, what I mentioned next. Here I give a lot of comments here. This is what I said. Comment 2. This verse 7 is a jewel, because it reveals several things that only God himself could have known in the time of Adam and Eve. First is the prophecy given by the Lord. They will bring the waters of the great flood upon the whole world, and he's telling that like 1500 years before it happened. And that's a marvelous prophecy. But there's something even more revealing in this verse, as it states, I'll bring them to a distant land, talking about their descendants at the time of the flood. Noah and his 3 sons and their wives, and his wife, of course. I'll bring them to a distant land, and the land in which thou now dwellest shall remain desolate, without one inhabitant within it. Comment number 3. If we take the traditional stance that the earth is solid, and that Noah started his journey someplace close to Israel today, and he landed after the Great Flood on Mount Ararat in the mountains of Turkey, then the above verse could not have been fulfilled, as it clearly states, I'll bring them to a distant land. It goes on to say even more strange things. Comment 4. From the traditional viewpoint, one could not justify that Noah had moved to a distant land after the Great Flood, as the mountains of Ararat are not far away from Israel. Also, we know that Noah and his descendants came down from Mount Ararat, and from thence they populated the earth. So how would it be possible that the land in which thou dwellest now shall remain desolate, without one inhabitant in it? Here's my take on the situation. If the earth is in fact hollow, what if Noah started on the inside of the earth before the Great Flood? He travelled an exceptionally long distance to a faraway land, being the outer surface of the planet, where man had in general not been living before, till after the Great Flood. Mankind came to live on the outer surface of the planet, and the inner surface became without inhabitant and desolate, at least for a very long time. Inner earth eventually became the domain of evil spirits and demons, as they were already in a lower dimension in the inner earth. Apart from the evil spirits, eventually different peoples migrated to inner earth since the Great Flood for different reasons. Strangely enough, there's a very odd verse in the cryptical book of 2nd Esdras. Yeah, you can see my book, Esdras Insights, which sounds like the above verse in reverse. In other words, some representatives of the 10 lost tribes of Israel made a pact with God to go to, again, a distant land where man had supposedly not been before, well, to the best of their knowledge. 2nd Esdras 13, 17, 18. But they formed this plan for themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the nations and go to a more distant region where mankind had never lived. There at least they might keep their statutes, which they had not kept in their own land. And they'll get this bit, real spiritual place too. And they went in by the narrow passages of the Euphrates River. Very spiritual place according to Revelation. For at that time the Most High performed signs for them, stopped the channels of the river, until they'd passed over through that region. There was a long way to go, a journey of 1.5 years. And that country is called Azareth. And they dwelt there until the last times. And now they're about to come again. Comment 9. You can read a lot more about this intriguing story in my book, Esdras Insights. Here's a source reference from that book concerning the inner earth. Merton Lona Nicolai, Beyond Azareth, A Story of the Lost 10 Tribes, article in the Relief Society magazine, October 1919 to July 1920, Salt Lake City, Utah. Reprinted in Search magazine, Palmer Publications, summer 1980, fall 1980, and winter 1980-1981, under the title Azareth, Land Beyond the Pole. Forwarded by John Brigham, who allegedly discovered this manuscript diary telling of the experiences of the author, the sole survivor of a wrecked whaling vessel in the Arctic Ocean, at his encounter with the lost tribes of Israel, who reside in a hidden polar country in extreme north. Source, A Guide to the Inner Earth, M. Subterranean Basis, Think About It. Site. And finally, verse 8. After God had thus discoursed to them, they went back to the cave of treasures. But their flesh was dried up, and their strength failed from fasting and praying, and from the sorrow they felt at having trespassed against God. I would add today, from what I understand, I believe that Adam and Eve And the Garden of Eden was inside the earth, inside a hollow inner earth. And I believe also that Noah and his sons, they started inside the earth. And at one time it wasn't really possible to get to the outer earth because there wasn't enough water, there wasn't enough seas until the flood came along. Then finally there was enough water to get in a boat, sail with the currents, either out the northern or the southern aperture, and came to live on the outside. Strangely enough, I found out from the lost books, Adam and Eve, that where they started on the inside is exactly, you go straight through the crust from where they started to the outer surface, and that's exactly where they ended up, Israel. How that was possible, I don't know. How do we know that? Because we know from Jewish books that Machpelah, the cave where Abraham buried Sarah, was a double cave and had a spiritual link. And it talks about Adam and Eve were also buried in that cave. How you can explain things like that when the crust of the earth is like 300 miles thick, I don't know, it's a mystery, but that is in the Jewish books. That is it. You read the Jewish books, you'll find out about these things, about the strange cave of Machpelah, that it's dimensional, where it has not only Adam and Eve, it also has Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, in that same cave. They call it a double cave in Israel. It's a very fascinating topic. But I'll tell you, this world is not what it seems. We have all kind of dimensions around us, and I'll reiterate the best comparison they said from those who have been to the spirit world and talked with those there, said if you see your physical world as just like an ice cube floating on the oceans of the world, well, the oceans are like the spirit world. The ice cube is just a whole physical reality, a whole universe. We're surrounded by dimensions that look after our universe and look after us and look after every detail. We've got nothing to be afraid of. We have God, he's in total control. Yes, well, that's enough for me for today, but have a great day, everybody. But do get my book, Eden Insights, which has the lost books of Adam and Eve inside it, and it's got an incredible amount of information. It's very exciting books, very, very exciting how that Adam and Eve had to contend directly, face to face with Satan himself when they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden. He was always trying to destroy them. But, of course, God got the upper hand through his son Jesus, the Word of God, who appeared in person and defeated the devil, pest, got rid of him countless times. But you need to read the challenge and the fight that Adam and Eve went through. Incredible. Really incredible. But they stuck together through thick and thin, God bless them. Adam and Eve. It's a fantastic book. Everybody should read this, Lost Books, Adam and Eve. Well, bye for now. I'm Stu. Get my book, Eden Insights. See you later.